No doctor could save the billionaire's son until a humble waitress stepped forward and achieved the impossible, leaving everyone speechless and the father in tears. Before we begin, I need to ask for something important. If you don't follow our channel right now, the algorithms could separate us forever. Your likes, comments, and shares are the only way we stay connected. Don't let this be our last encounter. Hit that follow button now. And now, let's dive into the story. Alejandro Salinas adjusted his bespoke silk tie for the third time in 10 minutes, his jaw tight as he watched his 7-year-old son Mateo struggle forward, leaning on his crutches across the polished marble floor of the Salinas Medical Center in Singapore. The irony was not lost on him. He owned the country's most advanced private hospital, yet he was powerless to help his own son walk normally. Mr. Salinas, the investors from Marina Bay Financial Center are waiting in the boardroom. His assistant, Laura, whispered, her voice barely audible in the sterile corridor, adorned with awards and accolades that suddenly felt hollow. "Tell them I need 5 more minutes," Alejandro replied, his steel-gray eyes never leaving Mateo, who paused to rest, gripping his crutches with a determination that simultaneously broke and strengthened his father's heart. Dr. Hernandez approached with the latest results, his expression already foretelling disappointment. The experimental treatment from Germany showed no significant improvement. "Alejandro, I'm afraid we've exhausted most conventional options." Alejandro's hands clenched into fists. 3 years of searching, consultations with specialists from the National University Hospital to private clinics in Mount Elizabeth. Millions of dollars invested in cutting-edge treatments. Yet, his son faced each day with a courage that humbled the city's most powerful magnate. Mateo's condition, a rare neurological disorder affecting his motor skills, had baffled every expert they consulted. "Dad, can we go to that place where they make the really good grilled cheese sandwich?" Mateo asked with a bright smile that masked any frustration. "Of course, champion. Anything you want," Alejandro replied, scooping him up, crutches and all. The boy's laughter echoed through the corridor, a sound more precious than any profit Alejandro had ever made. 20 minutes later, they arrived at Lupita's Kopitiam, a simple hawker stall Mateo had discovered during one of his nearby medical appointments. Alejandro felt conspicuously overdressed in his designer suit amidst the vinyl seats and checkered floor, but his son's excitement made any discomfort worthwhile. "Welcome to Lupita's. Table for 2? A warm, pleasant voice said, with an intelligent tone that made Alejandro look up from his phone for the first time since they entered. Sofia Morales stood before them, order pad in hand, her light brown hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore the stall's black uniform, but her posture suggested she belonged in a much more sophisticated setting than this humble eatery. Her green eyes held a depth that spoke of experiences beyond her apparent 20s. "Yes, our usual table by the window," Alejandro replied, with a certain coolness, already reaching for his phone again. "You must be Mateo," Sofia said, naturally crouching to the boy's height. "I've heard you give the best grilled cheese recommendations in the whole city." Mateo giggled, instantly enchanted. "Dad says I'm an expert because I've tried them everywhere." A true connoisseur," Sofia said seriously, as if discussing fine wine. "That's very impressive. I bet you know exactly how the cheese should melt, right?" As they walked to the table, Alejandro noticed Sofia's gait. Confident, purposeful, almost clinical. She moved with the precision of someone accustomed to high-pressure situations, not the casual lightness one would expect from an ordinary server. "Do you want some help with that?" Sofia asked Mateo, gesturing to his crutches with direct kindness, devoid of the awkward pity most adults showed. "I can do it," Mateo said proudly, settling into his seat. "I'm getting faster with these." "I see. Your balance and coordination are excellent," Sofia replied, and Alejandro perceived something in her tone. It wasn't just courtesy, it was a professional assessment. "You seem to know quite a bit about physical therapy for a waitress," Alejandro commented, with a mix of suspicion and curiosity. Sofia's expression shifted for barely a second. A shadow crossed her face before she recovered her professional smile. "I've had some experience with mobility issues," she replied diplomatically. "Now, what can I get for you today?" As she took their order, Alejandro observed her hands. They were soft and well-maintained, with calluses in places that suggested more complex activities than carrying plates. When she wrote, her handwriting was precise, almost medical. "Dad, she's really cool," Mateo whispered when Sofia left for the kitchen. "Yes, she seems adequate," Alejandro replied, though his attention kept returning to the kitchen, where he watched Sofia move with almost choreographed efficiency. When she returned with their food, Matteo was struggling to open a cookie packet, his fine motor skills making the task frustrating. Sofia watched for a moment, then sat beside him. "Can I show you a trick?" she asked gently. Sometimes the angle changes everything. She took Matteo's hands, adjusting his grip with a subtle precision that immediately made the task much easier. Alejandro watched the scene with growing fascination. Sofia's touch was confident, therapeutic, almost like watching a seasoned occupational therapist working with a patient. "There you go. You just needed to activate your thumb muscles differently," Sofia explained. And Alejandro nearly choked on his coffee. Activate thumb muscles was not a typical waitress's vocabulary. "Are you sure you just serve tables here?" Alejandro asked directly, his business instinct telling him something was amiss. Sofia's cheeks flushed slightly. "I serve food." "Yes. Is there something wrong with that?" "There's nothing wrong with honest work," Alejandro replied, though his tone made it clear he wasn't entirely convinced. "You just seem to have very interesting skills." "People are full of surprises, Mr. Salinas," Sofia said with a slight smile that could be interpreted as mysterious or simply polite. The name recognition hit Alejandro immediately. He had never mentioned his surname. Sofia's eyes widened for a fraction of a second before she recovered. "You're Alejandro Salinas. Your photo was in the business section last week. The expansion of the medical center. Besides, Matteo mentioned you own several hospitals during his consultation as a grilled cheese expert." Good recovery, Alejandro thought, but not good enough. This waitress had just shown she read business news and retained detailed information about medical facilities. His curiosity was beginning to transform into genuine interest. "Dad, Sofia, can she eat with us?" Matteo suddenly asked. "She knows about thumb muscles and she likes grilled cheese too." Alejandro expected Sofia to politely decline, but she hesitated, looking around the almost empty kopitiam. "If your dad doesn't mind, I suppose I can take a short break. Please, join us," Alejandro heard himself say, surprised by the sincerity of his invitation. As Sofia slid into the seat opposite them, Alejandro noticed how she automatically assessed Matteo's posture, making small, almost invisible adjustments to his position without drawing attention. Everything within him told him this woman was hiding something important, and Alejandro Salinas had built his empire by trusting his instincts about people. "So, Sofia," he began, leaning back with the relaxed confidence of someone accustomed to getting answers. "What brought you to work as a waitress at Lupita's Kopitiam?" The question hung like a challenge, and Sofia's answer would determine whether Alejandro's growing suspicions were justified or if he was simply intrigued by an unusually observant waitress who had won his son's heart with genuine kindness. Sofia's fork hovered over her salad as Alejandro's question hung in the air between them. She could feel his penetrating gaze, dissecting every micro-expression, every pause. Matteo, oblivious to the tension, happily devoured his grilled cheese sandwich with the carefree enthusiasm only children possess. "Life doesn't always go as planned," Sofia replied carefully, taking a measured bite to buy time. "Sometimes we end up in places we never imagined." "That's quite philosophical for someone who serves comfort food," Alejandro observed, his tone warm enough to soften what could have been an accusation. "I prefer to think of it as adaptability," Sofia retorted with a slight smile. "It's amazing how much you can learn about people when you're not sitting behind a mahogany desk making assumptions about their intelligence based on their job title." Alejandro raised an eyebrow, clearly not expecting that subtle verbal jab. "Though I'd say curiosity about someone who talks about activating thumb muscles with a 7-year-old is not the same as making assumptions." "Valid point," Sofia conceded. Matteo looked up from his sandwich, sensing the adult conversation had become interesting. "Are you having one of those grown-up talks where you say one thing but mean another?" Matteo asked with surprising perception. Sofia let out a genuine laugh that completely transformed her face. "Your son is exceptionally bright, Mr. Salinas. He inherited it from his mother," Alejandro replied automatically, and immediately felt that familiar tightness in his chest that always came when he thought of Clara. 3 years had passed since she was gone, but the pain still found him in the most unexpected moments. Sofia noticed it immediately. "I'm sorry for your loss," she said softly, with an empathy that suggested personal experience with grief. Alejandro studied her face, surprised by the authentic understanding he saw in her. "How did you know I was talking about a loss?" "By the way your voice changed, by the slight tension in your shoulders." "Some things are universal, regardless of economic status," Sofia replied, then seemed to realize she was being too observant again. "You notice too many things for someone who supposedly just brings food to tables," Alejandro said. But his tone was no longer suspicious, but interested. Matteo had followed the conversation with the intensity of a child who sensed something important was happening. Sofia, do you know how to help people who don't walk well? The question was innocent, but Sofia's reaction was immediate and revealing. Her entire body tensed for an instant, her fingers squeezing the fork a little too tightly. Alejandro mentally noted that reaction. I know a little, Sofia said carefully. Why do you ask, sweetheart? Because sometimes my legs don't work like other kids, and the doctors can't fix it. But when you helped me with the cookies, it felt different. Better, somehow. Alejandro watched as Sofia's expression cycled through several emotions. Surprise, something akin to recognition, and then a carefully controlled professional distance that struck him as oddly familiar. Matteo, Sofia said softly, would you mind if I watch how you hold things, just to see if there are any little tricks that might help you? She was asking permission from both Matteo and Alejandro, but her voice had taken on a serene authority that made Alejandro straighten in his seat. This wasn't a waitress chatting with a customer. This was someone with real expertise conducting a clinical assessment. Sure, Matteo said enthusiastically, while Alejandro nodded in consent, fascination overriding any caution. Sofia moved to Matteo's side in the booth with precise, purposeful movements. She watched him pick up his sandwich, analyzed how he held his glass, and took mental notes that Alejandro could almost see forming behind her concentrated expression. Matteo, can you make a fist for me? Good. Now move just your fingers, keeping your thumbs still. Perfect. Her voice had completely changed, warm yet professional, encouraging yet analytical. Your fine motor control is actually quite good, Sofia continued, and Alejandro felt his breath catch. Fine motor control was exactly what Dr. Hernandez had mentioned in their last consultation, the specific area where Matteo had the most difficulty. Try this, Sofia said, showing him how to position his hand differently when reaching for the glass. Start the movement from your shoulder. Let the force flow through your arm to your fingers, instead of forcing it from the wrist. The change in Matteo's movement was subtle, but immediate. His reach was firmer, more controlled. Alejandro leaned forward, unable to believe what he was seeing. How did you know to do that? Alejandro asked, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. Sofia froze, realizing she had revealed too much. I've helped people with similar challenges before. What people? Where? And don't tell me you learned that serving coffee and cake, Alejandro insisted, a father's desperation overriding any concern for politeness. Matteo practiced his new way of holding things, delighted by the improvement, oblivious to the growing tension between the adults. It's complicated, Sofia said, beginning to withdraw. My son's condition is also complicated, Alejandro replied, his voice heavy with the weight of 3 years of desperate searching. So please, help me understand how a waitress knows more about his motor skills than specialists from the National Institute of Pediatrics. Sofia looked at Matteo, still happily exploring his new dexterity, then returned her gaze to Alejandro. Something in his expression, a raw hope, mixed with barely contained desperation, seemed to reach her. I used to work in pediatric rehabilitation, she said softly. Before I came here, Alejandro felt his world shift slightly. You worked? And why did you stop? Because sometimes the medical world isn't as pure as people believe, Sofia replied, with a bitter tone that spoke of personal betrayal. That sounds very enigmatic. It's honest, Sofia retorted. Not everything can be solved with money and connections, Mr. Salinas, not even when you own hospitals. The challenge in her voice sparked something in Alejandro, not anger, but recognition. For the first time in a long time, someone spoke to him without reverence or hidden agenda. Someone who saw beyond his wealth and position, treating him simply as a father seeking help for his son. You're right, Alejandro said, surprising both of them. Money can't cure Matteo. 3 years and millions of dollars have proven that. But knowledge can help. Expertise can make a difference. And right now, you seem to have both. Sofia stared at him, clearly not expecting such an admission of vulnerability from someone with his reputation for control and dominance. What exactly are you asking me to do? She asked cautiously. I'm asking you to help my son, Alejandro replied simply. Whatever the cost, whatever you need, whatever happened in your life, none of that matters if you can improve Matteo's life. Matteo looked up, sensing the importance of the moment. Sofia, would you help me walk better? I promise to be good and do exactly what you say. Sofia's composure finally broke a little, and genuine emotion crossed her face. Matteo, you are already perfect just as you are. Any help I could offer would only be tools to make things easier. So you will help me? Matteo asked, hopefully. Sofia looked at Alejandro, then back at Matteo, clearly wrestling with a decision that went beyond simple physical therapy techniques. "I need to think about it," she said at last. "This is more complicated than you imagine." Alejandro reached into his jacket and pulled out a card, writing his personal number on the back. "Take all the time you need, but please consider it. What happened before doesn't have to define what happens next." Sofia took the card, her fingers brushing his for an instant. The contact was electric, unexpected, and both pulled back slightly, surprised by the jolt of awareness. "Should I get back to work?" Sofia said, putting her professional mask back on, though the blush on her cheeks didn't quite disappear. As she cleared the dishes, Alejandro found himself memorizing details about her. The way she moved, the careful control of her expressions, the evident intelligence she tried to minimize. Mateo was already asking when they could see Sofia again. Alejandro Salinas was accustomed to getting what he wanted through persistence and resources. But something told him that Sofia Morales would require a completely different approach, one that might test everything he thought he knew about himself and about what he was willing to sacrifice for the people he loved. 3 days passed before Alejandro received Sofia's call. He was in the middle of a board meeting, analyzing quarterly projections with investors from 3 different continents, when his personal phone vibrated. Seeing an unknown number, he was about to ignore it until something prompted him to step out of the boardroom and answer. "Mr. Salinas," a carefully controlled, more formal voice said. "This is Sofia Morales from Lupita's Kopitiam." Alejandro felt his pulse quicken unexpectedly. Sofia. He was starting to think she had decided not to help Mateo. "I've been thinking about it," she replied. "A lot. If I agree to work with him, certain conditions will have to be met." Alejandro almost smiled. Of course there would be conditions. In his experience, the most valuable people always had them. "I'm listening. First, this will be done professionally, not as a favor or an act of charity, but as a formal therapeutic relationship. I will need to see all his medical history, consult with his current doctors, and establish a real treatment plan. Done. What else? Second, we will work in neutral places, neither at your home nor at the medical center somewhere. Mateo can feel comfortable and relaxed." Alejandro paused, intrigued by her insistence on boundaries. "Any suggestions?" "There's a community club about 10 minutes from the Kopitiam. They have an excellent space for physical therapy that they rent by the hour. It's clean, well-equipped, and not intimidating." "And the third condition?" Alejandro asked, sensing something was still missing. Sofia hesitated for an instant. "My past is not open for discussion. You are hiring me to help Mateo, not to satisfy your curiosity about why I work as a waitress instead of doing what I did before." The slight break in her voice told Alejandro everything he needed to know. Whatever had driven Sofia away from pediatric rehabilitation had been painful enough to leave deep scars. "Agreed," he said simply. "When do we start?" "Saturday morning at 9. I'll text you the address." Alejandro hung up, feeling a mixture of hope and expectation that had nothing to do solely with Mateo's treatment, and much to do with seeing Sofia Morales again, in her true element. Saturday dawned fresh and clear. Alejandro had barely slept, oscillating between excitement for Mateo's potential progress and an inexplicable nervousness about seeing Sofia again. Mateo, for his part, had talked about nothing but Sofia, the helper, since they left the Kopitiam. The community club was simple, but well-maintained, located in a converted old warehouse with high ceilings and natural light streaming through skylights. Alejandro expected to go through preliminary conversations, perhaps fill out forms. Instead, he found Sofia in the physical therapy room, dressed in black sportswear that revealed toned arms and an athletic build that spoke of serious training. Her hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she was reviewing a folder full of detailed documents. "You've been busy," Alejandro observed, noticing the professional setup, exercise mats, therapy tools, and what appeared to be a carefully designed session plan. "I told you if we did this, we'd do it right," Sofia replied, looking up with a warmer smile than her phone voice. "Mateo, are you ready for some work?" "Yes." "What kind of work?" Mateo asked enthusiastically, adjusting his crutches under his arms. "The fun kind," Sofia said, winking. "But first, I need to understand exactly how your body is working right now. Is that okay?" For the next 30 minutes, Alejandro watched as Sofia performed the most comprehensive assessment he had ever seen of his son's condition. She was patient, but precise, encouraging, yet analytical, guiding Mateo through movements and exercises while taking detailed notes. Her expertise was undeniable. She identified muscle weaknesses and compensatory patterns that other therapists had missed. She asked questions about Matteo's daily life that revealed aspects no doctor had considered. And most surprisingly, she made the entire assessment feel like an elaborate game. "Matteo, you're doing excellent," Sofia said as she finished that part. "Now I want to show you something interesting." She led him to a mat and demonstrated a series of exercises that seemed simple, but were clearly designed to address his specific neurological challenges. What impressed Alejandro most was how Sofia adjusted her approach in real time, reading Matteo's reactions and adapting instantly. "Do you feel the difference when you activate your core first?" Sofia asked, as Matteo performed a movement with noticeably better control than before. "Yes, it's like my whole body works together, not just my arms," Matteo replied, genuinely excited. Alejandro felt a lump in his throat. In just 30 minutes, Sofia had helped Matteo achieve better motor control than he had in months of conventional therapy. But more than that, she had given him confidence. She had made him feel capable, not limited. "Sofia," Alejandro said during a pause while Matteo drank water, "where exactly did you train? This level of expertise doesn't just appear overnight." Sofia's expression changed, the professional mask returning to place. "I told you my past wasn't open for discussion, even when it's clearly world-class. Matteo has advanced more in a single session than in months of traditional therapy. Progress that could be lost if we don't maintain consistency and proper boundaries," Sofia replied firmly, though Alejandro caught a glimmer of pride in her eyes. The conversation was interrupted by Matteo's enthusiastic voice. "Sofia, look at this." He was attempting the core activation exercise on his own, the technique still imperfect, but with absolute determination. "Excellent work, Matteo. You're getting the hang of it," Sofia encouraged him, then turned to Alejandro with a softer expression. "He's an extraordinary child, you know? His neuroplasticity is exceptional for his condition." "Neuroplasticity," Alejandro repeated. "That's not a basic physical therapy term." Sofia realized she had revealed more specialized knowledge and looked away. "I read a lot." "Sofia," Alejandro said, in a quiet voice, "whatever happened in your past, whatever made you leave medicine, it doesn't change the fact that you have a gift. Matteo responds to you like he hasn't to any other therapist. Sometimes gifts come with too high a price," Sofia said softly, watching Matteo practice his exercises with admirable concentration. Alejandro wanted to press, to ask for more explanations, but something in Sofia's tone made him stop. Instead, he said, "The important thing is that you are helping him now." "Thank you." Sofia seemed surprised by his restraint, as if she expected more interrogation about her past. "You're welcome. Same time next week." "Of course. And Sofia, whatever you did before, wherever you trained, it's exactly what Matteo needs now." As they prepared to leave, Matteo hugged Sofia with sincere affection. "Sofia, you're the best helper in the world. Can you also be my friend, not just my teacher?" "Of course, sweetheart," Sofia replied, letting her professional demeanor drop completely in the face of the child's innocence. Alejandro watched the scene, impressed by Sofia's natural connection with Matteo, by how her defenses lowered before his son's genuine enthusiasm. He wondered what it would take to earn that same unconditional trust from the mysterious woman who was working small miracles with his child. Walking towards their cars, Alejandro made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of pressing Sofia to reveal her past, he would earn her trust the same way she was earning Matteo's progress. Little by little, with consistency, and an authentic respect for the boundaries she needed to maintain. But as he watched her drive away in a modest sedan, as carefully chosen as everything about her, Alejandro found himself wishing that trust would one day include understanding the fascinating, reserved woman who was bringing light back into his son's life. The anonymous email arrived on a Tuesday morning, slipping into Alejandro's inbox between quarterly reports and merger proposals like a poisoned dart straight to the heart. The subject line was cold and professional. "Urgent warning about your son's new therapist. Possible serious breach of medical ethics." Alejandro was about to delete it, thinking it was spam, until he saw Sofia's name in the preview. His blood ran cold as he opened the message. "Mr. Salinas, I feel compelled to warn you about Sofia Rodriguez, who currently uses the surname Morales. 3 years ago, Dr. Rodriguez was stripped of her professional license following the catastrophic death of a patient at the Singapore Children's Hospital. Her experimental treatment protocol caused permanent paralysis in an 8-year-old patient. The family's lawsuit revealed gross negligence and falsified research data. I am alarmed to learn that she has somehow gained access to your son. Please protect Matteo before history repeats itself. Sincerely, a concerned healthcare professional." Attached were what appeared to be court documents, medical council resolutions, and news articles detailing a malpractice case that had destroyed Sofia's career and reputation. The photograph showed a different woman, elegantly dressed, confident, standing beside research awards and speaking at medical conferences. But the face was unmistakable. It was Sofia. Alejandro's hands trembled as he read. Sofia Rodriguez had been a rising star in pediatric neurology, a prodigy who graduated medical school at 24 and conducted groundbreaking research on childhood motor disorders. The case that destroyed her involved a treatment she herself developed, applied without proper authorization, which left a child permanently paralyzed. The betrayal hurt him more than any corporate deception he had ever experienced. Sofia had not only hidden her past, she had actively deceived him about the expertise she was using to treat Mateo. How could he have been so naive? How could he entrust his son's care to someone who had already ruined another child's life? His phone vibrated. It was a message from Sofia, confirming Saturday's session. The casual normalcy of the text seemed obscene after what he had just discovered. Hi Alejandro, looking forward to seeing you both on Saturday. Mateo's progress has been remarkable. I have some new exercises that can help with his bilateral coordination. See you at 9, Sofia. Alejandro stared at the screen, fury and pain battling in his chest. She was still pretending, maintaining the story that she had only been a rehabilitation worker, not a discredited doctor whose negligence had shattered a family. He called Sofia immediately, his business voice cold and controlled, despite the emotional whirlwind within him. Sofia, we need to talk now, not Saturday. Now. Her voice instantly changed, sensing his tone. Alejandro, what's wrong? Is Mateo okay? Mateo is fine. It's you I'm concerned about, Dr. Rodriguez. The silence that followed was so long that Alejandro thought the call had disconnected. When Sofia finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. How did you find out? Someone who cares about my son's safety sent me the truth about your previous career. The question is, why didn't you? Alejandro, please, let me explain. Explain what? How you lied about your identity? How you've been treating my son with techniques created by someone who paralyzed another child? How you've pretended to be a simple waitress when you're actually a discredited doctor who lost her license due to malpractice? It wasn't malpractice, Sofia said, her voice breaking with 3 years of suppressed pain. The treatment was working. The family was desperate, just like you are now. I was trying to save that child's mobility, not destroy it. The medical council disagreed. So did the courts. So did the family whose daughter will never walk again because of your arrogance, Alejandro retorted harshly. Sofia's gasp was clearly audible on the other end of the phone. You don't understand what really happened. The case, the evidence, everything was manipulated. I was framed by people who wanted to steal my research, to destroy my credibility, to take my work. How convenient, Alejandro responded, though something in Sofia's desperation made him waver. Blaming a conspiracy when your own negligence ruined a girl's life. I have proof, Sofia said urgently. Documents that show what really happened, who was truly responsible. I've carried this secret for 3 years, afraid to trust anyone because those who betrayed me have connections everywhere, even in your world. Alejandro felt a spark of doubt, but the fury was too intense. Even if that were true, you lied to me. You put my son at risk by hiding your history. How do you expect me to believe a single word you say now? Because you've seen the results, Sofia pleaded. Mateo's progress is real. My techniques work because they're based on solid science, not the lies that destroyed my career. Please, Alejandro, don't let that conspiracy hurt Mateo by taking away treatment that is truly helping him. The treatment ends now, Alejandro said in a definitive voice. Do not contact us again. Do not approach my son. If you attempt any further contact, I will have security personally remove you. He hung up before Sofia could respond and sank into his office chair, feeling empty and betrayed. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, Singapore stretched below him like a kingdom he no longer wished to rule. Everything he had built, all his success and power, felt insignificant in the face of this deception. But even as he tried to process his anger, Alejandro couldn't forget Mateo's excitement before each session with Sofia, the genuine progress he had made, the light in his son's eyes when he spoke of his helper. If Sofia was truly dangerous, if her treatment was harmful, wouldn't Mateo's condition have worsened instead of improving? Doubt clung to him like a splinter in his mind, growing with each passing hour. As night fell, Alejandro found himself reviewing the anonymous email more carefully, noticing inconsistencies in the attached documents, questioning the conveniently timed revelation, just when Mateo was showing unprecedented advancements. At 9 p.m., his private investigator, Roberto Mendez, arrived at the penthouse with a preliminary report that would change everything. Alejandro, whoever sent you this information has ties to very powerful people. The email was sent through servers in 3 different countries, but I managed to trace it back to a law firm specializing in medical patent disputes. And what does that have to do with Sofia Rodriguez? Alejandro asked. Roberto spread several documents across the dining table. Doctor, Sofia Rodriguez was working on revolutionary treatment protocols for childhood neurological disorders. Her research was worth millions, possibly billions, if it became standardized treatments. One day, before her malpractice case went to trial, 3 high-ranking colleagues at her hospital registered patents for treatments suspiciously similar to hers. Alejandro examined the patent records, his business mind immediately recognizing the pattern. They wanted her research, and more than that, they needed to discredit her completely so she could never claim the theft. The malpractice case was their weapon. I'm still investigating, but preliminary evidence indicates that the patient's deterioration was not caused by Dr. Rodriguez's treatment. It was caused by a secondary medication administered by another doctor after her protocol had shown positive results. The truth hit Alejandro like a punch to the chest. Sofia hadn't lied about the conspiracy. She had been a victim of it. Her colleagues had destroyed her career and reputation to steal her life's work, then systematically buried the evidence that would have exonerated her. Roberto, I need you to get everything. Every document, every testimony, every piece of evidence that was hidden in the original case, and I need it fast. Alejandro, this kind of investigation can take months. You have 48 hours, Alejandro interrupted him, with the authority of a man accustomed to moving mountains. Money is no object. Call in every favor. Hire the best experts. But I need proof of Sofia Rodriguez's innocence by Thursday. When Roberto left, Alejandro remained alone in his penthouse, looking at the city lights and facing the magnitude of his mistake. He had accused Sofia of being a fraud and a danger to his son, when in reality, she was a brilliant doctor whose career had been destroyed by the same kind of corporate ambition and manipulation he knew too well in his own business world. But the damage was already done. Sofia was gone. Mateo's progress would stop, and Alejandro had lost something valuable he was only just beginning to understand. Not just the therapist who had worked a small miracle with his son, but the woman who, unknowingly, had become essential to both their lives, in a way that went beyond medicine. The next morning, Mateo's enthusiastic questions about Saturday's session with Sofia felt like daggers in Alejandro's heart. How could he explain to his 7-year-old son that the woman who had restored his hope and progress had been driven away by his own father's fear and prejudice? How could he admit that his need to control and protect had destroyed the best thing that had happened to them as a family since Clara's death? As he watched Mateo practice the exercises Sofia had taught him, maintaining his improved motor control even in her absence, Alejandro made a decision that would shape the course of their lives. He would find the truth, expose the conspiracy that had destroyed Sofia's career, and somehow convince the woman he had hurt so deeply to forgive him. But first, he had to confront the possibility that his accusation and rejection had driven her away forever, that the second chance at healing and love she had offered had been lost due to his inability to trust when fear took over. By Thursday night, Alejandro had set up a veritable war room in his private conference area. Documents covered every surface: medical records, court transcripts, financial statements, and phone records painted a picture of corruption so systematic it took his breath away. Roberto Mendez had worked 48 hours straight with a team of investigators, forensic accountants, and medical experts to uncover the truth. Dr. Patricia Henriquez, Sofia's former department head, had orchestrated the entire conspiracy with surgical precision. She identified Sofia's revolutionary research on neuroplasticity treatments, recognized its enormous commercial potential, and methodically began to steal it. The plan required completely destroying Sofia's credibility so she could never challenge the theft. The patient who became paralyzed, Sara Martinez, had not suffered complications from Sofia's treatment. Dr. Henriquez had administered an experimental muscle relaxant without Sofia's knowledge or consent, a medication that interacted catastrophically with the therapeutic protocol. Afterwards, Dr. Henriquez falsified records to make it appear that Sofia had supplied the conflicting drug. Alejandro, look at this, Roberto said, pointing to financial statements spread across the table. 3 days after Sofia's license was revoked, Henriquez received a $12 million research grant to develop innovative childhood neuroplasticity treatments. The proposal contains entire sections of Sofia's original work, word for word. Alejandro felt nauseous. Sofia had told the truth about being framed, and he had been too blinded by fear to believe her. And Sara Martinez, where is she now? That's where this gets more interesting. The family moved to a small town outside Singapore, like Malacca, 6 months after the settlement. I managed to locate them. Sara's mother agreed to speak with us. Roberto played a recording on his laptop. The voice of a woman, laden with guilt and regret, filled the room. We knew something wasn't right about that case. Dr. Rodriguez had helped Sara for months, and she was improving. The treatment was working. Then suddenly she worsened, and Dr. Henriquez said it was because Dr. Rodriguez had made a mistake with the medication. But Sara kept asking for Dr. Rodriguez. She said she wanted her real doctor back. The lawyers convinced us that Dr. Rodriguez was dangerous, that we should sue to protect other children. They promised us money for Sara's care, but above all, they wanted us to remain silent and disappear. Alejandro closed his eyes, imagining Sofia carrying the weight of a false accusation for 3 years, believing she had ruined a child's life, when in reality, she was trying to save it. There's more, Roberto continued. I found the lawyer who represented Dr. Rodriguez in the original case. He was terrified, Alejandro, truly terrified. He admitted that evidence was hidden, witnesses were intimidated, and he was practically forced to accept a settlement that stripped Sofia of her license in exchange for avoiding criminal charges. Completely fabricated criminal charges, Alejandro said harshly. Exactly. Dr. Enriquez has connections throughout the medical system. She has destroyed at least 3 other promising researchers in the last decade, using similar tactics. Sofia was just the brightest victim. Alejandro stood and walked to the windows. The city lights reminded him of Sofia's eyes, that first day at the Kopitiam, full of intelligence, and marked by a pain he failed to see. Where is Sofia now? That's the problem. She's vanished. She quit her job at the Kopitiam, packed her apartment, and left no forwarding address. My sources believe she plans to leave the country, to start fresh somewhere where her reputation won't haunt her. The idea of Sofia fleeing, of losing her forever because of his betrayal, ignited something in Alejandro. Find her. I don't care the cost or how many people you have to hire. Find Sofia Rodriguez and bring her back. Alejandro, even if we find her, getting her to trust you again after what happened. I'll deal with that when the time comes. Right now, I need to focus on clearing her name and ensuring those who destroyed her life face justice. Alejandro spent the next 3 days orchestrating what he privately called Operation Redemption. He used every contact, every pending favor, and every ounce of influence accumulated over years of business to systematically dismantle the conspiracy that had ruined Sofia's career. First, he hired the country's best medical malpractice lawyer to file appeals, requesting the reinstatement of Sofia's license based on the new evidence. Then he arranged for Sara Martinez's family to be relocated near specialized treatment centers, with all expenses covered and a trust fund established for the child's ongoing care. The most satisfying part was preparing for Dr. Patricia Henriquez's downfall. Alejandro's team presented evidence of research theft and medical fraud to the Singapore Medical Council, the Commercial Affairs Department, CAD, and 3 medical journals that had published the stolen work. By Friday afternoon, Henriquez had been arrested, her medical license suspended, and the stolen research funds frozen as the investigation proceeded. But none of that mattered if Alejandro couldn't find Sofia and convince her to forgive him. The decisive turn came on Saturday morning. Roberto called at dawn with news that made Alejandro's heart race. I found her. She's in a small town called Teluk Intan, about 2 hours north of here, across the border. She's staying at a guest house. Apparently, she's trying to decide whether to accept a job offer from a clinic in Kuala Lumpur. Alejandro was in his car, driving through the pre-dawn darkness towards an encounter that would define the rest of his life. He had prepared speeches, rehearsed apologies, practiced explanations with the evidence that proved her innocence. But as he entered the parking lot of the Casuarina Inn, everything crumbled into a single desperate truth. He loved Sofia Rodriguez, and he had almost destroyed them both by not trusting that love when it mattered most. Sofia was sitting on the porch swing, wrapped in a cream-colored sweater, holding a cup of coffee. She looked more fragile than he remembered, as if the weight of 3 years of false accusations had finally broken something essential within her. When she saw him approach, her expression didn't change. There was no surprise, no anger, just a resigned weariness that tore Alejandro's soul apart. "How did you find me?" she asked softly. "I have good investigators," Alejandro replied, sitting on the porch steps facing her. Sofia, I need you to know that I now know the truth. About Dr. Henriquez, about what really happened with Sara Martinez, about how you were framed to bear the blame for others' ambition and negligence. Sofia's cup trembled slightly in her hands. It doesn't matter anymore. The damage is done. Yes, it does matter. Henriquez has been arrested. The medical council is reviewing your case to fully reinstate your license. Sara Martinez's family wants to see you to apologize for their role in the cover-up. Your research is being credited to your name, not to those who stole it. For the first time since he had arrived, Sofia showed emotion, a flicker of hope that she quickly tried to contain. Even if all that's true, it doesn't change what you said to me. How quickly you believed I was a danger to Mateo. How easily you threw away what we were building together. Alejandro felt those words like a physical blow. You're right. I failed you when you needed trust the most. I let fear crush everything I knew about your character, your integrity, your love for Mateo. I'm not asking you to forget it, or to pretend it didn't happen. Then what are you asking me for? Sofia asked. Alejandro held her gaze, seeing beyond the pain to the woman who had worked miracles in his son's life and in his own. I'm asking for a chance to prove myself worthy of your trust. I'm asking you to come home and help me raise Mateo in a world where brilliant, good people like you are protected and valued, not destroyed by corrupt systems. Sofia remained silent for a long time, watching the sunrise paint the sky in golden and pink hues. Mateo must be wondering what happened to his sessions. He asks about you every day. He's been practicing the exercises you taught him, maintaining his progress even without you. Alejandro paused, deciding to risk complete honesty. But it's not just Mateo who needs you, Sofia. I need you. Not as Mateo's therapist, or as Dr. Rodriguez, the brilliant researcher. I need you, the woman who challenges me to be better, who sees beyond my money and power to the man I want to become. Sofia put down her coffee cup and looked directly at him for the first time since he had arrived. Alejandro, what are you really saying? I'm telling you that I love you, he replied simply. I fell in love with you at Lupita's Kopitiam, when you made Mateo laugh while helping him with his cookies. I fell more in love watching you work with him, seeing your passion and talent in every gesture. And I knew how much I loved you when I thought I had lost you forever due to my own fear and clumsiness. Sofia's eyes filled with tears, but now she was smiling. A genuine smile, the first since everything had broken. You know this sounds crazy, right? She said softly. A powerful billionaire and a discredited doctor turned waitress. The tabloids are going to have a field day. Alejandro smiled, feeling lighter than he had in days. What, you think I don't control several media outlets? But Sofia, if we're going to do this, I have one condition. Now you have conditions? She asked, with a hint of her old playful tone. I want you to be Mateo's doctor, not just his therapist. I want you to have your own research lab, your own team, the resources to continue the work that was stolen from you. I want the whole world to know that, doctor. Sofia Rodriguez is the brilliant woman who not only healed my son, but also managed to heal his broken father. Sofia rose from the swing and walked towards Alejandro, taking his face in her hands with the same precision and tenderness with which she guided Mateo in his exercises. Sounds like a very good deal, Mr. Salinas, she said, with a voice full of the love and trust that had almost been lost forever. But I also have a condition. Anything you want. The next time someone tries to convince you that I am dangerous or untrustworthy, you come to me first. You ask me the truth before drawing conclusions. Can you promise me that? Alejandro covered her hands with his own, looking into the eyes of the woman who had become his second chance at everything that mattered. I promise. And Sofia, there won't be a next time. From now on, when the whole world is against you, I'll be by your side, fighting for us. When Sofia kissed him tenderly on the porch of that small-town guest house, Alejandro finally understood that what he had been searching for his entire adult life was not just success, or security, or even love, but companionship. Someone to challenge him, to trust him, and to build something beautiful together from the ashes of their past pains. They still had much to do. Mateo was waiting, and Sofia's career needed to be fully restored. But for that moment, holding the woman he loved in the golden light of a new dawn, Alejandro Salinas finally felt he had come home. 6 months later, Alejandro stood in the grand ballroom of the Metropolitan Hotel, watching Sofia move among the guests during the official celebration of her professional reinstatement. She navigated the room with the same natural grace she once showed serving coffee at Lupita's Kopitiam. The medical community had gathered to officially welcome back Dr. Sofia Rodriguez, whose revolutionary research was already being implemented in pediatric hospitals across Singapore. "She's extraordinary, doctor," Hernandez commented, appearing beside Alejandro with 2 glasses of champagne. "I've been practicing medicine for 30 years, and I've never seen anyone command respect the way she does." It's hard to believe that just 6 months ago she was hiding her identity in a kopitiam. Alejandro took the glass, but kept his gaze fixed on Sofia, who was conversing with a group of neurologists about her latest protocols. "She wasn't hiding," he replied calmly. "She was protecting herself from people who would have destroyed her again if they found her. And now she has someone who protects her while she changes the world," he added with satisfaction. "Besides, she's about to become a Salinas, and that brings its own armor." "Doctor," Hernandez chuckled softly. "By the way, have you told her about Mateo's latest progress reports? His improvement is being documented for publication in 3 different medical journals." Alejandro smiled, recalling his son's excitement that morning when Sofia showed him his most recent results. Mateo was now within normal ranges for fine motor control, general coordination, and bilateral integration. His crutches had been put away 2 months ago, replaced by a confidence that completely transformed the way the child moved through the world. "She knows," Alejandro replied. "What she doesn't know is what I've planned for tonight." Across the ballroom, Sofia caught his eye and smiled. That same warm, knowing smile that had first captivated him in that modest kopitiam. She excused herself from her group and walked towards him through the guests. "Are you hiding from your own celebration?" she asked, taking his hand naturally. "I'm not hiding," Alejandro replied. "I'm planning something," and he led her towards the hotel's rooftop garden. "There's something I want to show you." The terrace had been transformed into a small private paradise, with string lights twinkling among carefully arranged flowers and a single table set for 2, or rather, for 3. Mateo was already waiting for them, dressed in his best suit and smiling with uncontainable excitement. "Surprise!" the boy exclaimed. "Dad said I could help with the special dinner." Sofia looked from Mateo to Alejandro, sensing that something important was about to happen. "What is all this?" Alejandro guided her to the table, where 3 place settings confirmed this was a family moment. "Mateo and I wanted to celebrate your reinstatement away from the noise, just the 3 of us." As they sat down, Mateo could barely contain himself. "Sofia, guess what? Dad says you're going to be my real mom now, not just my doctor." Sofia's eyes widened in surprise, seeking an explanation from Alejandro. He took her hand across the table, tracing gentle circles with his thumb on her palm. "I know we've talked about getting married," he began carefully, "but I realized there was something we never discussed properly. Mateo has been asking for a long time when you're officially going to be his mom, and I understood that I'd been thinking about this all wrong." Sofia's voice trembled with emotion. "What do you mean?" "I've been planning a traditional proposal, thinking about perfect speeches and romantic settings. But our story was never traditional, Sofia. It began in a kopitiam with a child who needed help, and a woman brave enough to give it despite her own pain. It grew amidst trust, betrayal, and forgiveness. It's not a fairy tale. It's something better. It's real." Alejandro rose from his chair and knelt beside Sofia. But instead of pulling out a ring, he motioned to Mateo, who ran to join them. "Sofia Rodriguez," Alejandro continued, "will you marry us? Not just me, but our family. Will you be Mateo's mom and my wife, the partner I want by my side in every challenge and every triumph life brings us?" Mateo pulled a small velvet case from his pocket with solemn seriousness. "We picked it out together," he announced proudly. "Dad said it had to be perfect for the perfect mom." Sofia opened the box and saw an emerald-cut diamond surrounded by tiny emeralds that perfectly matched the color of her eyes. But it wasn't the beauty of the ring that made her cry. It was the moment Mateo hugged her tightly around the neck and whispered, "Please say yes, Sofia. I already told everyone at school you're my mom." "Yes," Sofia replied through her tears. "Yes to marrying you. Yes to being Mateo's mom. Yes to this beautiful, complicated, perfect family that, without knowing how, we've built together." As Alejandro slipped the ring onto Sofia's finger, Mateo clapped and cheered with that pure happiness that had been missing from their lives before Sofia entered that kopitiam 6 months ago. "There's one more thing," Alejandro said, pulling an official-looking document from his jacket. "I've created the Rodriguez Foundation for Pediatric Research with an initial endowment of $50 million. You'll have total autonomy to develop the research you deem most important, with resources to hire the best team in the world." Sofia looked at the document, then at Alejandro, and then at Mateo, who was still hugging her with the intensity of a child who had finally found his missing piece. Alejandro, it's too much. The foundation, the lab, all of this. It's not enough, Alejandro interrupted gently. Sofia, you saved my son's life and restored my faith in love and companionship. This foundation is just the beginning of everything I want to build with you. We are going to change the way the world treats children like Mateo, the way it supports brilliant researchers like you, and the way it protects those who dare to innovate and heal instead of just thinking about money. Later that night, after putting Mateo to bed with a story about the upcoming wedding and the promise that nothing would change except that Sofia would officially be his mom, Alejandro and Sofia stood on the penthouse balcony, looking at the lights of Singapore that had brought them together. Do you ever think about that first day at Lupita's Kopitiam? Sofia asked as her engagement ring sparkled in the city lights. Every day, Alejandro replied, wrapping his arms around her from behind. I was arrogant. I was convinced I could control everything with money and influence. I never imagined that a waitress with mysterious skills and a guarded heart would teach me what true power looks like. Sofia leaned back into his chest, at peace with her past and excited for the future. And I never imagined that a demanding, distrustful billionaire would become the man who would fight to clear my name and give me back my career and my trust. We're a peculiar couple, Alejandro murmured against her hair. The discredited doctor and the work-obsessed billionaire, united by a child who needed us both to be complete. Speaking of Mateo, Sofia said with a mischievous smile, he's been asking when he's going to have a little brother or sister. Apparently, he thinks having a doctor mom and a hospital-owning dad means we can make perfect babies. Alejandro let out a laugh filled with happiness and possibilities. That boy has heard enough medical terminology for a lifetime. But Sofia, when you're ready, when we're ready as a family, I can't think of anything that would make me happier than watching you bring new life into this world we are building together. 6 months after that, Doctor, Sofia Salinas stood in the Rodriguez Foundation laboratory, one hand resting on her already visible belly, watching Mateo help her research assistant organize data from the latest clinical trial. Her treatment protocols were now being used in 47 hospitals worldwide, helping hundreds of children achieve mobility and independence their parents had never imagined possible. Alejandro appeared at the laboratory door, still in his business suit from a board meeting, but with his tie loosened and sleeves rolled up, the image of a man who had learned to balance professional success with personal happiness. How are my 3 favorite people today, he asked, kissing Sofia's cheek and ruffling Mateo's hair with the same affection. Mateo has been helping me calculate success rates, Sofia replied, automatically seeking Alejandro's hand as they watched their son. Brilliant, self-assured, and walking without any support, he explained statistical analysis with the enthusiasm of someone who had inherited the intelligence and determination of both parents. And my little sister is practicing her soccer kicks, Mateo announced, placing his small hand on Sofia's belly with the tender reverence of an older brother already deeply in love. Alejandro knelt beside his family, joining his hand with Mateo's on Sofia's belly, marveling at the life growing there. A life that represented not only their biological union, but everything they had overcome to build this extraordinary alliance. We're going to have to expand the lab, Sofia said with feigned seriousness. Between Mateo's help in research and this little one's future contributions to pediatric medicine, we're going to need more space. Done, whatever you need, Alejandro replied. And Sofia knew he meant it with the same absolute conviction with which he had fought to clear her name, with which he had proposed marriage to his entire family, and with which he had stood by her side in every challenge and every triumph since that day at Lupita's Kopitiam. Looking at her husband, her son, and the foundation they had built together, Dr. Sofia Salinas understood that miracles were not just medical breakthroughs or unexpected recoveries. Sometimes miracles were simply a love that refused to surrender, a trust that survived betrayal, and second chances that transformed not only individuals but entire families, communities, and in time, the world. Outside the laboratory windows, the city stretched before them like a promise. A place where a waitress could once again be a respected doctor, where a reserved billionaire could learn to trust completely, where a child's need for healing had united 2 wounded hearts to make them whole. The miraculous touch that had started everything was still alive, not just in Sofia's healing hands, but in every life her love had transformed, in every challenge they had overcome together, and in every hope they held for the future. And so they would continue building, one act of courage and compassion at a time.